get started and we'll get organized.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Board of Selectmen's meeting for Wednesday, February 10th. Sorry about that, it snowed. It's 5:30 this morning. We convened an executive session to discuss two things. That is the extension of the town administrator's contract and the extension of the purchase and sales agreement or option for the Selectmen property. And now we're back in open session. So would you please rise and join me with Pledge of Allegiance, please? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I just take a moment to announce, it seems we're doing this too often these days, but another member of our town community, if you will, Arv Groswald, passed away on Saturday. Arv served on the Finance Committee in this town and did a lot of other activities in this town. So I just ask us to observe a moment of silence and think of Pam, his wife, as we move forward. Thank you. Okay, weekly briefing. Have anybody for weekly briefing? Public comments and announcements? You guys want to get right to the business, huh? Okay. Consent agenda. Janelle?
Mr. Chair, I move that we vote to waive the policy deadline and approve the nomination of David R. Scannell to the Harwich Hall of Fame and approve and sign the presidential primary warrant.
Second.
Moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. So we have public hearings and presentations now. The first one is a public hearing on a seasonal common victory alcohol, all alcohol beverage license. Janelle, do you have the notice of the hearing there? Give you a minute to get it.
Sorry, was it prepared? Where is it? Notice of public hearing, Town of Harwich, Board of Selectmen, application for liquor license. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws as amended. The application has been made to this board for a seasonal common victular all alcoholic beverages license for Hot Stove Inc., DBA, Hot Stove at Cranberry Valley, Ronald Liedner, manager, on the following described premises located at 183 Oak Street, Harwich. Dining room, 1,363 square feet with 5 entrances and exits. Kitchen, 554 square feet with 3 entrances and exits. Outside deck, 1,377 square feet with 4 entrances from dining room. Basement, 448 square feet with 1 entrance and exit. The Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing upon the application on Wednesday, February 10th, 2016, no earlier than 6:30, in the Don B. Griffin Room at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, at which time all interested parties will be heard. Board of Selectmen, Local Licensing Authority.
Okay, thank you. So at this time, we'll open the public hearing. Is the applicant here?
Mm-hmm.
Anything, Chris, anything we need to discuss? Or
I think all the material is in the file. I mean, if there's any questions, the applicant is here to
the green cards, which.
yeah.
take the green cards.
And this is this has to do with the facility at the Cranberry Valley Golf Course and the food service there. So this is the alcohol license that goes with it. Anybody in the public? Anybody want to say anything? Okay, then we'll close the public hearing. I'll ask the board what their pleasure is.
Mr. Chair, I make a motion that we approve the application for a seasonal common victual license, all alcohol beverages license for the Hot Stove, doing business as the Hot Stove at Cranberry Valley.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the license. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Congratulations. Okay. Next, we have another license application. Would you read this for us, please?
Notice of public hearing, Town of Harwich, Board of Selectmen, application for liquor license. Notice is hereby given under Chapter 138 of the General Laws. As amended, that application has been made to this board for a seasonal common victular all alcoholic beverages license for Ember Pizza Inc., DBA Ember, Justin R. Brackett, manager, on the following described premises located at 600 Route 28, Harwich, Port, Mass. 02646. A 1.5-story framed building with 1 dining room, 1 foyer, counter service, waiting area with minimal seating, outside dining area, 1 kitchen, 3 lavatories, basement liquor storage, exit entrance on all 3 sides of the building. The Board of Selectmen will hold a hearing upon the application on Wednesday, February 10th, 2016, no earlier than 6:30 in the Don B. Griffin Room at Town Hall, 732 Main Street, Harwich, at which time all interested parties will be heard. Board of Selectmen, Local Licensing Authority.
Okay, thank you, and we'll open the public hearing. Is anybody here to discuss this? Yes, sir. Please come to the podium, introduce yourself.
Hi, my name is Joseph Fritz. I'm a unit owner at Soundside Condominiums, Unit 10. I'm also the president of the Condominium Association there. And I would like to ask through the board, I have some questions and concerns that I would like to see if you could answer them for me, please.
Okay, could you just hold on 1 second? Is the applicant here? All right, let me see if the applicant wants to say something first, sir, and then we'll get to your question. Do you have something you want to say? Okay.
I'm just saying I was here.
Okay, all right, good. All right, come on back. Thank you. Sorry about that.
First, I have no objection
Yeah,
to...
can you talk into the mic, please? Just
Sure, I'm not...
Folks at home want.
I'm nervous, so
That's okay,
please.
don't be nervous.
I'm not used to doing this, but I
It's okay.
feel I need to say something. I just have some concerns. I lost my train of thought.
But you had the property next door, right?
Yes, right next door. As a matter of
Okay.
fact, my unit actually abuts the parking lot, and that's one of my issues that I have. First, through the chair, I'd like to ask the applicant, is this gonna change the hours of operation that are gonna be happening by changing his liquor license from wine and beer to all alcohol?
He's shaking his head no, but we'll let him respond. If you have other questions, let's get those, and then we'll have him come up and speak.
Sure.
Okay.
Second, my question is, a response is to, we've had some concerns with parking, especially overflow parking from this unit. There's been many times where cars that visit the unit, and like I said, I'm not in favor of not changing his license, but I want to have some questions answered and
Understand.
concerned.
It's okay.
Okay. There's been many times, especially during summer, when cars have been parking on Bank Street, on the sidewalk, the grass berm, in front of our property. Sometimes they try and overflow into our little parking lot that's there, and we don't really enforce it or anything. We don't call the police on it, but, you know, it is a concern. And I'm wondering, you know, by changing this license, are they gonna have more patrons? And is the number of parking spaces for this facility sufficient in order to handle any changes that are coming because of this license? I mean,
Okay.
you know, normally beer and wine, you don't get too concerned about it, but once it's a bar, I would consider it more of a bar now, because more than a restaurant. So with alcohol and you know, hard liquor alcohol, things are a little different. That was one concern. Next concern. Because they have outside dining, they have a fire pit outside, and which is great. But I'm also concerned with volatile alcohol, which is more flammable than beer and wine, being tossed in their fire pit. All right, now that's a concern that I've had. You know, I'm a neighbor. I've had an issue, not with the owner or the applicant or whatever, but we had an issue where a patron came, either flung a cigarette or a worker flung a cigarette into the mulch that, you know, abuts the property. The mulch caught fire. Our fence caught fire. I had to replace 2 sections of fence and a fence post. And I think we tried to contact them, but, you know, we weren't that worried about it. We just wanted to handle it and try to be a good neighbor. I try not to you know, the guy's got to make a living. I understand that. And my third, basically, question is, goes back to capacity. I mean, how many seats does this restaurant hold? Number one, does it include outside dining included in that number? Number two, when they include more alcohol, are they gonna have more seats at the bar, which is gonna change the number of seats in the dining room? Everything in this town is determined usually on sewer flow, and, you know, how many patrons are they gonna have there during a high season, during 4th of July? How many patrons are gonna be outside, and how many patrons are gonna be inside? Because the noise factor of customers opening and closing their doors, leaving the establishment, hooting and hurrahing, is, you know, it will rise, and that's basically my concerns. We have not called the police on them at all. You know, try not to bother them, you know, the neighbor. I know where we live. I know we live next to a restaurant, and I'm afraid that it's gonna get more noisy. And, now, I couldn't tell you what kind of zoning we're in. I have no clue. All I know is that I'm a real direct abutter, and everybody in this situation, they're not there all the time. I'm there a lot more than everybody. I don't live there. I commute when I want to. I come down a couple times a month, but in the summertime, I come down more. I'm a Cape Cod resident who now I live up near Boston, and now I keep coming back and forth because this is what I like, you know. And so I have these concerns, and I'm really wondering, you know, has this been thought out? Other than that, like I said, I'm not in favor of stopping any from doing business or changing their license. That's not why I'm here. I have these concerns.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Would you care to address those concerns, please? I think it's basically, if I could summarize it, it has to do with how your business may change, going from beer and wine to, you know, all alcohol, basically, hours of operation, is concerned about capacity, you know, concerned about the fire pit, et cetera. So, yeah.
Okay, nothing will change. The seating, parking, everything remains the same. We're just adding liquor, just because some people come in and have a preference, and we've noticed they'd rather have a cocktail than beer and wine. That's really no more, no less. Nothing changes. You know, I definitely heard his concerns parking-wise. I think July and August, we are very busy, and the lot is full, and I know there is some overflow. We try, you know, we obviously tell people they can't park anywhere but our lot. But I do not think it would be any busier, or, you know, that anything would change or because of having a full liquor license.
Are you aware of the fence issue that he was talking about?
I saw that, and I didn't know, we never had a conversation. I didn't know if it happened on their side or our side. I did see that I think was it August?
Yeah, it was
Yeah, I mean,
last year.
But I didn't know what happened or where it came from. I didn't know if it started on that side, or I could see that it burnt on the bottom of the fence.
Okay, if that were to happen again, I'd suggest he come and talk to you as soon as he could to see
Yes,
if he
for
could
sure.
work something
Yeah,
out or
we could
whatever. That's an
remedy it.
issue. There was a topic of the fire pit. Do you have any safety issues associated with
We-
the fire pit, do you know of, or?
I mean, we have a cage over it. Obviously, no one should ever throw anything in the fire pit, and we haven't had issues with anyone putting stuff in the fire pit. They really can't with the cage over it.
Okay, what's the capacity inside for the,
Off the top of my head, it's about 100, but it wouldn't change. You know, this isn't gonna add seats or anything like that.
okay, and he was, I think you mentioned something about septic or whatnot, I mean,
Yeah, but we're not trying to increase seating. The seating will stay the same inside and out.
okay. You able to contact this gentleman? Do you have his information if you ever need
Yeah, we
it?
can exchange.
Okay, I mean, just wanna make sure there's a way for you two to connect with one another as opposed to just jumping over the fence or something like that, you know? Good neighbors are hard to find sometimes, and I think that, you know, that's definitely a relationship you want to foster, if you will. Okay, any other comments from the public? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. What's the pleasure of the board?
Mr. Chair, I move that
No.
we approve the application for a seasonal common victular all alcoholic beverages license for Ember Pizza, Inc., DBA Ember.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the license. Further discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote. Thank you. Okay, next we have a presentation of the FY17 budget and the budget message to the Selectmen and the Finance Committee by the Town Administrator. Dana, do you and Jack want to sit up here, or do you want to sit out there? Are you comfortable? You're welcome to join us if you'd like to, but it's probably easier to see it from there. You can use the table? This table, okay.
set, Mr. Chair?
Yeah, so you're gonna do this, Chris, right?
Yes, yes,
Okay.
please.
And just for the board, this is a separate item on our Dropbox, isn't it? Yeah, okay, so,
PowerPoint.
Thank you.
Just in terms of, I'd like to just make a few opening comments first, and then I'll kind of get into the substance. A lot of work went into this. I appreciate all the various departments coming in and going over their budgets. I think we met with just about everyone during the course of probably the last 2 months. Most of the work, or a lot of the work that goes into this in terms of balancing it and making decisions about what stays and what goes, falls to me as the administrator. Andy was at each of the meetings with me, so I appreciate his efforts throughout the process to make sure that it's balanced, as well as Charlene participated extensively in the process this year as well. In terms of just kind of a few high-level comments, just kind of thinking about the budget and how this budget was formulated. Obviously, my responsibility is to have a balanced budget, so this budget is balanced. In terms of some of the highlight items that I just wanted to mention, basically we were able to retain the services that we have at the existing levels. We have been able to provide some limited expansion, and I'll get into that. I am a little bit concerned that as we continue to add positions year after year, this will be the 3rd year in a row, that we are going to continue to create budget pressure on us as we build our salaries. Salary and wages, that is going to create additional pressures. So that's something that is of concern that we want to, I mean, it's very modest in terms of the amounts, but still, that I think that will eventually catch up to us. We also have had a trend, which is a good trend, and that is the real estate and personal property taxes have gone up by 3.7%, which is a good number. So the new growth numbers continue to be favorable for us. And really, local receipts went up by 7.7%. Both of those numbers are good numbers that help to balance the budget. But this year, we had health insurance came in at, I just went to the health insurance meeting this morning, and the health insurance increase for active employees, the average increase is going to be 10%. 10% on one of our larger budgets creates fiscal pressure. The other thing that I think that came in, Monomoy came in on February 1st, as well as Cape Cod Tech, and in both of those cases, the assessment to the town was 5.99% on the Monomoy assessment. Again, these are numbers that are higher than really we're able to sustain with property tax alone, and primarily we get most of our money from property tax. So in terms of the Monomoy assessment, I think when you drill down, their overall budget, I think, went up by about 4%, but it was some of the money that they rely upon, school choice, I think kind of went a little bit negatively for them, so they didn't have as many resources to put towards it. So the assessment led to that assessment being higher, but yet the overall budget went up by 4, and we went up by 5.99. On Cape Cod Technical High School, you know, that was very interesting that we had 2 additional kids in the system. Their overall budget basically stayed at 0, and because they had the 23 people leave, the 23 kids leave, the net loss at Dennis Yarmouth, that had our increase go up by 7.6. So there are some concerning trends about the spending that's happening. I think that in terms of Monomoy, certainly it was very good news for last year. I think we started off at 12 and went down to about 7. So this year we're in a more reasonable range and have been in a reasonable range from our discussions. Overall, for the just for the town-wide operating budget, we were able to keep costs at 3.5%. So I thought that was a significant positive. Some of that, just again, observations. You had some departments, the police department, because they had such a large turnover, mostly due to retirements, that their budget, because their salaries went down as newer people took over for people that had higher levels in the ranks, that you were able to see, or you can see in the budget, that we were able to absorb those costs, plus add a new officer, and the net impact to that budget was 0. And you look at the fire department, or actually the better example, I think, was the library. The library has a lot more people that are in the steps, and their overall budget increase was much more significant. So, you know, it is interesting that you have different elements, different departments having different results as you go through this. So just a few observations in general about the budget. With all that being said, you know, it is balanced, and I think it's responsibly balanced in this circumstance. I started in December of 2013 with the town, and one of the things that I brought was what I would call kind of a budgeting system that I adopted when I worked in the town of Wellesley. And in Wellesley, they really had the importance of analyzing your financial situation based upon Standard & Poor's. How do other AAA rated communities basically provide their budgeting? So I've always adopted that philosophy, no matter where I've been, to try to put ourselves in the best position from a rating standard in order to improve the operation. Those rating standards aren't just standards that are done, you know, on a whim. I mean, they're carefully thought out. They analyze different financial situation of different towns, and they come up with really almost the best practices that exist in these communities, and that's what they have as an element to how do you get to a AAA. So these are ones that I think I've had these each year that I've done these presentations. So why don't we, and I'm not going to go through each one specifically, but I do want to highlight 4 out of the 10. One of them is number 3, that we do on a monthly basis, and sometimes even more frequently, look at the revenue updates and try to identify shortfalls early. I think it's been very good that department heads come into me and say, yes, we're having an issue. We talk about what that issue is. We talk about contingency plans to try to mitigate that. And in many cases, we've been able to reduce any shortfalls as much as we're able to in most areas. The 4th item is to establish a rainy day and budget stabilization reserve. This is critical to do, where you have times in which I've been doing this for 25 years, and in 2008, when we had the financial crisis, it had a dramatic impact on municipalities. And the best way to be able to mitigate those types of events is that when you have the ability to put money into reserves, it makes sense. It's prudent practice to do so. So you will see as we go that we have built up reserves. We've had some good fortune, and we are in this budget do build up reserves. Number 6 is to establish, too, a long-term and contingency liability management, specifically OPEB, is other post-employment benefits. Specifically for most municipalities, it's health insurance. That health insurance liability is people that retire. We have a plan, and the state has I think, addressed pretty well how do you deal with the retirement element of those retirees, and how do you try to provide for that liability. And what you see starting really over the last probably 10 years has been how do you address the issue of the health insurance liability. And today, you know, you could have somebody retire at the age of 60 and they don't pass away until they're in their mid-80s. So you're talking about a 20-year cycle of how do you fund that. And a lot of the rating agencies and the accounting world is looking at trying to understand what are those liabilities and how are you providing for it. Like I said, in terms of the state has basically mandated that the retirement is fully funded by 2040. So every plan that is out there has to have a requirement to be fully funded by 2040. And you're starting to see in OPEB that element of the liability, that they want to see, number one, that what they've done over the last 5 years is identify your liability. And then number two is, now that you've identified it, what's your funding plan to meet that liability? And then the 8th item, which I think is important too, is how do you manage your debt? And do you look at projects going forward and see how do you fold those projects going forward into your current debt structure? Okay. Standard & Poor's, we have not had a bond rating done recently, so we do have to go back to one of the ones that was done earlier. And really the couple comments that they made in that, which is really what they're going to look at when they come back, is that the town does have extremely strong property wealth due to the oceanfront location. So you see that in terms of a lot of the value of the community is in the oceanfront areas. The town has a pretty good financial position in financial management policies. They certainly at the time, and I have a slide on this, talk about the reserve position, and they say despite recent declines, and you'll see in one of the slides what really raised some of that concern to them. We do have a moderate to low debt burden overall, and we do try to do rapid principal amortization. And then lastly, what is the plan for OPEB, the post-employment, other post-employment benefit liabilities? So that's what they wanted to see, and we do have a plan in place. That's an administrative plan to start to address those issues. Okay. One of the things I wanted to look and I was kind of interested in was, you know, are AAAs possible on Cape Cod? And just going through some of the managers' meetings, you see that, or I learned at some of these managers' meetings that there were towns, quite a few towns on the Cape that have a AAA bond rating. So I had Charlene did this graphic, and you can see every one of our neighbors, Dennis, Brewster, Chatham, Orleans, and Wellfleet, and are already AAA rated. So we are a AA plus. I think that certainly that's the next step below, so we have certainly a good possibility. But you can see even the town of Barnstable, which certainly would have demographics that would be in some ways probably less favorable than Harwich, is a AAA rated. Mashpee also is a AAA rated. So it's certainly, I think, attainable for the town to reach that, but we are going to have to keep those 10 things in mind as we proceed to head towards that AAA. So I think it is something that is important to head to that, and it's not just about getting a lower percentage when we borrow money, although when we do the sewer project, which could be anywhere from 180 to 230 million, when you're going to the market over the next several years to start borrowing large sums of money, having the AAA is significantly to the advantage of the town. So trying to move in that direction now, I think, makes a lot of sense. Okay. So I just wanted to put up kind of the total numbers here. So you could see the total revenue is 59,501,000. The expenditures 59,500,000. I left a very minor surplus of 938. We have allocated in here in terms of kind of budget highlights and major initiatives. How are we going to allocate the $4 million that was identified as free cash this past year? And we have 1.5, which was slated in the capital plan fairly early on. 1.5 million would fund the capital plan. We have identified other items to be funded from free cash of $680,000. And then the idea behind this plan is also to commit funds to increase the stabilization. So we would have that go to $1 million, add $1 million to it, and then also commit additional funds above and beyond the funds that we already commit to OPEB of $300,000. And as this week has shown, we have to have some reserve for snow and ice. So in this plan, we have about $500,000 allocated aside to cover snow and ice. If we do not have to use that full amount, which I hope the heck we don't, that I would then recommend that we let that fall to free cash for this year in order to kind of maintain a strong free cash position. And you'll see on some of these slides where that has a significance to it. Okay. I just wanted to, I kind of indicated that I was going to show, you know, if this is a slide that actually at the MMA, the Mass Municipal Association annual meeting, they had on their, under their municipal finance, they had a presentation done by the A&F Secretary, Administration and Finance Secretary, and they talked about some of the slides that they have available to municipalities. And this one is the certified free cash. So you can see on the slide, I think we start off at 2003, that we were just under $4 million. And you look to 2012, and you see that trend line. I didn't run a trend line on this. That trend line is headed down. In 2012, there was a negative free cash balance. And you look at the trend line since 2012, and it's a trend line that's headed up. 2016, that $4 million that we had for free cash is the largest amount. I didn't go back further than 2003, but that is the healthiest free cash we've had at least since 2003. So I think that that is a significance. You know, will that trend line continue? You know, let's hope that with good management we can keep it on a positive trajectory. Certainly, it's not the intention of administration to have that go from $4 to $5 or $6 million. We want to keep that at a more reasonable level, but we certainly want to have that trend headed in the upward direction and not in the downward direction that it had been headed. One of the things too that I wanted to at least highlight in the budget presentation is I know this year when we set the tax rate that there was some issue and administration took some action to try to create and stabilize that. I appreciate the efforts of Andy, the finance director. What that basically did by increasing the amount that we have for local receipts is that had the positive impact of basically creating what's called excess levy capacity. And this is right off of the state's website. So you can see that the town has always been fairly close to its levy capacity with very few dollars being left on the table, if you would. And now in 2016, you can see that there is capacity. That capacity is not available to us for this coming year, 17, but that will be available to us in the out years. And that's something that, as we can draw that down, that gives us some financial flexibility moving forward in terms of budget design. One of the things to creating a stability in the budget is to make sure that we have the collective bargaining agreements at a place where we have them settled, and we have certainty to that. And here's a chart that we put together. Actually, I think Charlene did this chart as well, where you can see that we have the dot items are ones in which they were previously settled for 15 and the 16. I think that most of those occurred in the time that I've been here. And then the 16 going forward, obviously the board's very well aware that I have as one of my goals and objectives to see if we can get as many of these contracts complete. And as you can see from the chart, that we have just about everybody complete for 16. Out of the 8 units that we have, there's only the superiors that are currently pending. And I think we do have a negotiation session set up with them, I believe towards the tail end of this month. And that, I don't see that as necessarily as an issue. I think that's something that will get resolved. We did have a change in Labor Council, and I think that's kind of been more the reason why we've had a little bit of delay, because we've had a few legal issues in terms of the contract, the existing contract. So in terms of that, the other piece is, as has been announced after each of these settlements, that these have been reached agreement based upon a 2% cost of living adjustment. And that 2%, you know, the idea behind that is, as you see with Prop 2.5, we generate about 3 to 3 point, in this year, 3.7%. So if we can keep the cost of living at 2, and then with people with steps and such, keep that overall spending within that 3% or 3.5% range, that is something that we can hopefully continue to perpetuate without the need for an override. And this budget does not have any requirement for an override in it. I had alluded to earlier about the pressure. I know since I've been here that there's been a real pent-up demand for different positions, and we have been slowly trying to fill and meet some of those demands. And in this budget, we do have several items. There was a board request fairly recently that we were able to incorporate into the budget, the need for a consultant in regards to wastewater. So we have put in there a program number of $20,000. That one was included in the administration budget, just so we would have a placeholder under consulting. The assessors had put forth a program that will require special legislation to help those that are the most in need to have an additional senior exemption, basically above and beyond what currently exists. I think they have 80 people that they believe would be eligible for it, and it would be a $500 additional benefits. That's where we derive the $40,000 from. The police department last year was one of the priorities in the time I've been here. This is the third budget. The police department has not increased staff, but we did this year, I think in part due to the opioid crisis and things of that nature, did recommend having an additional police officer. That police officer will probably go into the rank and file and free up some time for detectives and others to be able to focus on the opioid. So it's not someone specifically dedicated for that purpose. Also, the next one is discussions with Sean Libby over at the DPW. We had a extensive discussion about what he thinks is his greatest need, and he came up with that he thought that the best thing to get started on improving central maintenance, facility maintenance, was to have a plumber. So we did in this budget include money for a plumber to be able to help him to go in that direction. That's not that was not the total of his request. That was just one of the ones that we thought we could fit within the budget. Also last year there was a commitment made in regards to the library, that the library opened up on Monday in order to try to make it work into the budget last year. It was only done for 10 months. So the library has asked for to be open on July and August. That would not require additional staff. It would just be additional staff hours. So that is the 14,000. So they wouldn't be hiring new people. They would just be increasing the hours of the existing personnel. On the last one, this is one that has come up fairly recently too. We have folks in the community that have the beginning stages of Alzheimer's, and they go over to the town of Orleans for an Alzheimer's adult daycare. And in that, the town of Orleans basically has subsidized our residents that go over and use that program. So what they are going to do is they have to cut off those towns in which they're subsidizing. So they've asked for the differential, that what they get in reimbursements that they still are short, and they've asked us for funding to make up that differential to continue that program. So that's something that I think the board may want to give some serious thought to. Certainly $7,500 is a small amount. I would say I think that there's about 10 to 13 people that utilize the program. So it's an issue that I think deserves some merit, at least for the initial budget pass. I did put that in, again, I've always, I guess, had a philosophy of we should try to take care of those that have the least ability to take care of themselves. So that is in there. I don't have it on the slide, but I did want to touch upon, there were significant reductions made from the requests. The Department of Public Works actually had $200,000, and over $200,000 in additional personnel that they sought. Obviously, we put the plumber in for this year. I did ask Mr. Hooper who he thought was kind of the next priority, and he has emphasized to me the last 2 years now the need for the highway department. The highway department has had the same number of people, I think, for like 20 years, and yet, as we learned on the Route 124 issue, there's things that we can't get to, such as cleaning out the catch basins and things of that nature, that may make some sense to try to have some additional resources put towards that. But that's not included in the budget, but I told him that that would be something that I would mention. Also, on the fire department, in conversation with the fire chief, we have added a firefighter the last 2 years. He thought that if we could fund some of these others, that he would forego a firefighter for this year. I do think it makes some sense to try to get to an additional 4 firefighters if we could do it over a span of time. We've already hired 2, and maybe in the 18 and 19 budgets, if we could try to get 2 additional, that would really help with some of his staffing issues in regards to the operations of the 2 stations and our ability to get to more of the ambulance calls. And then the last one that was also cut out was the conservation. The conservation director came and sought a part-time staffer. I think that if you had asked me before I came here, why would I dedicate additional resources to conservation? But I've been amazed at how much the level of conservation activity has been in the town. I mean, being a beach community and a community that has a lot of ponds and a lot of wetlands, there probably is some real merit to the requests. But I wanted to at least highlight some of those as ones for potentially future considerations as we move forward. The other thing that there was a couple of requests, one from the board that I received that we put into the budget presentation, and one from the finance committee that I put into the budget presentation. And on this is, we wanted to take a look at, okay, you have a police officer or a firefighter. We took kind of an average salary, in this case $60,000 just for that top one as a number. We figured out, okay, what's the town's portion of the health insurance costs related to that? What's the retirement portion? I do want to comment a little bit more on the retirement. What is police and fire don't fall under workers' compensation. There's chapter 152. They actually fall under statute 41-111F. So they have a separate statute. So I put in there the dollars that we use to fund that. Also unemployment, we put in an allocation for what we have in regards to the unemployment fund. We do as a pay-as-you-go program, so as that goes up, if we have more people that apply for that, and we generate a total. And you can see on the chart that we go about 42%. I think that number, quite honestly, is probably high in these cases. The main reason why I say that is when you look at the retirement, as I alluded to earlier, the state has a mandate that cities and towns have a fully funded retirement system by 2040. And in that, folks, I don't remember the year that they changed it, but a lot of people that have entered the system probably over the last 10 years, at least 10 or plus years, what they call 8 and 2s or 9 and 2s. So they pay 9% of their salary into retirement, and then 2% for anything over 30,000. What the impact of that has is for all employees except for public safety, that they basically pay for their own retirement. So these allocations should start to drop as time goes on in those areas, because someone that retired with a 5% allocation that didn't cover their whole costs that's where these dollars are coming in to meet the needs of those who have already retired ahead. So I just want to kind of point that out. So it's not really a dollar for existing personnel. Police and fire are a little bit different because they're able to retire a little bit earlier. There is additional costs that are above and beyond their contribution levels. Okay. Just want to get in, I've had some of these slides just for historic tax and revenue data. So I'm just going to kind of run through some of these just to give people a sense. Here's the property tax, the base levy limit as a percentage. So you can see we're in that between 3 and 4%. 2014 was a year in which there was an override. So not only do we have the typical 3 to 4%, but we also had an additional 2.9% on top of that. So that's why you see that spike. Okay. And then this is for just in terms of dollars. We are going to kind of double check that 17 number. I think that 17 number may be a little high, but you get a sense that each year, in order to meet the needs of the organization, costs go up and the revenue related to Prop 2.5 goes up. This is just a breakdown by group, so you can kind of see what the base levy is and then what some of the different elements. I think it's gold colored is the new growth that we get. So the new growth is something that is a real value to us in terms of doing that. And just for folks that may not be that familiar at home with the concept of new growth is really when you have a piece of, as an example, vacant property one year, and then you build a $300,000 house on it the next. That's considered to be new growth. That's what's captured each year, and that is added to the Prop 2.5 limit. Just want to look at a little bit of select budget data. So we'll go through some of these as well. Here we have the hotel and meals tax. You can see, fairly level, maybe slight rises in it. So it continues to be a pretty good source of our revenue as we go from year to year. Health insurance, as I kind of alluded to earlier, the trend line on health insurance it continues to rise. I think that will continue to rise. At this, where we just got the rate information today, I do want to go in and try to give a little bit more analysis to where we are with the health insurance piece. And this is one where the Finance Committee had asked, and I thought it was actually kind of interesting just to take a look at. They asked me for kind of, on the salary front, kind of what are some of the big drivers. And I just wanted to pick a couple of larger departments, and I think what I'll do is kind of rotate through the organization as I go. But here we have the police department is in the blue, and you could see that trend line that in 16 and 17, that trend is gone up, but yet 17 has the new officer in it. Some of that has been a commitment to putting more funds into overtime. To make sure that if there's additional services that are needed for patrolling the beaches, patrolling the trail system, that there's money put in there. I know in the time I've been here, I've been trying to make sure that we give additional resources to the police so they can do additional patrolling. So I think that's why you see that trend line headed up. Obviously, the fire department, as I alluded to earlier, we added additional personnel in 15 and 16. We have also put in there additional training dollars. On the fire side, some of that has been mandated additional training dollars as the requirement for paramedics has become more of a, how do I want to say it, more of a designated for how you have to do the training and when you have to do the training. So it's become much more of a fixed cost that you have to have the certain types of training in order to maintain that. So that is one that will continue to create some budget pressure on us, whether we add personnel or not. Okay. As I alluded to, one of the other big pieces that we want to look at is kind of the debt structure. We need to make sure that we try to plan for things. So here is the debt structure that has the Monomoy element, and then we also, I think this is the one that just had the Monomoy in it. Yeah, this is the existing debt structure. And then what we did was we took that existing debt structure and then we put in some of the proposed debt. So the $7 million, as I'll allude to in a little bit here, for the Saquotucket Harbor is included in it. I used the gross number. I did not use a net number. And then we looked at a lookout of about 7 years for the sewer project. What would the, or wastewater projects, you know, what would those cost based upon the planning dollars? And this gives you a sense for what those look like. Obviously, as we go forward, as opportunities for grants come in, you know, on the harbor project, for instance, none of that's captured. On the sewer project, I think we want to try to time things and have that take some of the peaks and valleys out of that. And this one was a slide that we had showed earlier. I think when we did the 5-year budget projection, you could see, I think we did a target of about 3 to 3.5% on the growth line, which is kind of consistent with our historical average. And then that red line that has the total debt, that basically just takes what you just saw. So if we had a consistent level of, if we had a policy where we wanted to keep our debt structure to about that 3 to 3.5% per year increase to kind of match up to Prop 2.5, what would that line look like? And then how do you start to feather in or have that debt that we're going to try to tackle for the sewer fit into that? So that's what that graphic shows, is that we're not really too far out of whack in terms of that approach. Okay. This is on the water. I don't believe that the water department this year has any debt that they are planning for FY17. This is their existing debt. As you can see, as projects come up for the water department, that they do have some capacity to kind of backfill those. I didn't superimpose on this that 3% growth or any kind of growth line. As you can see, they certainly have some ability to backfill and keep that debt at a level service. I just wanted to move now to the capital budget. I have a few graphics that we did with the folks on the capital outlay committee. So here you can kind of see, I just kind of grouped where's the funding. So this is kind of the capital funding. I'll show in the next couple slides some of the debt service. Here you could see by department, really the one that sticks out in 17 is the harbor project. And then we have the out years. Some of those other big ones are the sewer project or the wastewater project as that goes forward. And then this is just by grouping. So this is depending upon the different elements. So you can see harbor and wastewater and water are kind of larger requests. Kind of interesting, you look at the water one, pretty high, but yet a fair amount of that is coming out of some existing revenues that they've already put aside for projects. So that looks as if it's a high request, but some of that already has funding available for it. And then I'm not necessarily going to read through. I think I've extensively talked about the capital, and we had that $1.5 million. I know we went through a couple times in December and January the different capital requests. This actually goes to funding those requests, that $1.5 million from free cash. Just a couple highlights on there, just some of the bigger ones. The ambulance, that's, I think, their typical rotation, $290,000. A couple things that I did, actually not on this slide, but we have transfer station roof, $122,000, Mack trailer, $150,000. So there's some fairly significant items on there. One of the things that I think the board wanted to see that I made sure I made a conscious effort to do in this budget, in the last 2 years that I've been here, I think we've had between 8 and 9 requests for debt exclusion or capital exclusion, and I think the board wanted me to slow down on that or have much more of a minimal number. So this year, at least under this plan, what's being proposed to the board would be 3 debt exclusion questions. There's no capital exclusion questions on here. So it would be $7 million for the Harbor Masters waterside construction. So that's actually the dock system that's over the water. And then the Public Works. The reason why I make that differential is that there will be in out years a land side work that will be done or be requested from the Harbor Master. The Public Works, the 5-year road maintenance, we have had a target each year of about $1.4 million in terms of trying to keep up with the 140 miles of roadway system that we have in the community. We get about $700,000 from Chapter 90. Last year that number was a little less because we got a larger amount in Chapter 90, so that's why that number was reduced. But to get to the 1.4, we have $700,000 in there, and then $700,000 out of Chapter 90. And then on the wastewater, the purchase capacity for the Chatham wastewater treatment plant, I have up to $9 million. That is still a work in process, so we don't have a hard number yet. Actually, I have a meeting beginning of the week in Chatham to continue to have some discussions, and I know that there's a joint meeting that we're trying to set up with the Chatham Selectmen on the subcommittee to go through that. Okay. And then just on the reserve fund balances, just wanted to, this was the same chart that I put up last year. And last year, what Standard & Poor's actually looks like is somewhere in the range of, they're looking for 8 to 12% of your operating budget as the target. Here you can see in 16, we actually exceeded, well, we were above our modest target last year set of 7%. What really makes this up are the really 3 pieces, the stabilization fund, the OPEB trust fund, and then free cash, what free cash is certified. You can see in 17, we have just the 2. So here we would have the stabilization under this plan would go from roughly $1.1 million up to about $2.1 million. And the OPEB allocation, adding the additional 300 to the existing 500,000 that's already in there, approximately 500,000 that's already in there, brings us up. So we're just shy of $3 million. And if we were to get a free cash allocation in the neighborhood of around $1 million, which is kind of always my unofficial target, we would be in that $4 million range. So you see that, you know, we have building the reserves consistent with the Standard & Poor's. We continue to be able to do that. And just before, I just wanted a couple of highlights too that I just realized as I was going through that I didn't touch upon. The 2 things that, and kind of hard decisions to make, but ones that I thought had to be made, I alluded to earlier about $600,000 being allocated from free cash to cover certain items. One of those items would be funding I'm trying to find my chart here, but funding the $40,000 that we had for the assessors program. Also $125 to fund the middle school. We had funded that the first year out of, actually we did it as a capital appropriation, and then last year we put in the operating budget. This brings it back as an article. And then the other one, I was hoping that we would be able to incorporate dredging into the operating budget, but we have dredging for FY17 as coming out of free cash, with the idea that for 18 we would take 75,000 and then have the other 75,000 come from free cash, with the idea that 19 we would be able to fully implement that. So some of that, and then the other one is also last year when we did the Monomoy budget. The Monomoy budget had a capital assessment of 186,000, I think it was last year. That was done as a capital exclusion. This year, in the hopes that we can get to a better place in terms of the overall increase in the Monomoy assessment each year, that the 225,000, and that's a rounded number, that they're looking for as part of the assessment would also be funded out of free cash. So the idea in these cases is to fund some of these items out of the existing free cash as we try to transition to the operating budget. I think that concludes my overview of the budget, and we do have for distribution this evening the detail. So we have the summary information, and then we also have the individual line item information. We have it on disk, and then we did receive a special request for a thumb drive, which we have available, so we can distribute that afterwards to those that are here. I don't know, Dana, if you want them for the rest of your committee, or if you want to have your committee stop by.
We're meeting tomorrow night, so.
You're meeting tomorrow night? Okay. So we can,
So Chris, thank you and your team for putting this together. Obviously, a lot of work went into this, and you know, all the department heads and whatnot. That, you know, this process starts quite a while ago and culminates in getting this initial look at the budget. Lots and lots of detail here. I think, you know, we'll take a few questions here, but I think in general that you know, we're all going to be digesting this over the next couple of weeks, and as we get to our session, when is our Saturday session?
27th.
27th, which is coming up. Obviously, it's a couple weeks away. And that'll be the chance to sit with the department heads and whatnot, you know, on the major budgets, and you know, walk through all these things. So we have a lot of homework to do on our part. But I do appreciate the information, the presentation. So I'll just ask board members, have any questions or observations, or Angela?
Yeah, just a comment. I think our residents looking at the debt exclusions and looking at $7 million for the harbors, you should know that there's an effort on to have somewhere between half and all of that cost come from the harbors. The harbor master has been working diligently to put together a plan to cover most of the costs.
And there'll be more information we'll bring forward on
Yeah,
that in the
that'll
coming
be-
weeks. Yep. Yep.
Yes.
It's in process.
Yep. Linda?
Oh, just one quick question, because I haven't seen the numbers. The enhancement of services, the plumber, the police patrol officer, the numbers that were quoted, were that loaded or just a straight salary?
that's straight salary, but
Thank
we
you.
did provide some additional resources in the health insurance. If you remember last year, we did have an allocation for health insurance.
I just
So we
wanted to
just
make sure I
increased
knew if the number was loaded or not. Thank you.
Okay. Dana, do you have anything on the finance committee report?
Just one item, going back to that slide, I think it was number 7 on the Harwich free cash certified. I don't know if you can bring that one back up, but where it showed almost $4 million in 2003 and 2004.
Correct.
Just remind people that back then, we used approximately $2 million of that to support the operating budget.
Right.
And we had real pressure put on us to keep $1 million of that left over at the end. So really, even though there was $4 million there, only about $1 million was spendable in terms of trying to accomplish those kind of things. And that's one of the biggest differences between 4 million today and 4 million back then, is this 4 million is available to us and will all be put to good use in terms of what we can do with it.
Yeah, I appreciate, I wasn't aware of all the history, so I appreciate that. And it makes me kind of highlight the point that, you know, we specifically, any money that we used in the free cash was not used for salaries.
Right, yeah.
So we're using it for capital-related items, which again is kind of
One-time
one of
purchases.
one of the dictates that they tell you they want you to do. Thank you, though, for the information.
Anybody else? Linda?
Well, I think just to continue that, I think at that point, the Board of Selectmen since then took the pledge not to use free cash to fund the budget. And I think we have kept to that.
Anybody else? Okay, thank you. More to come, obviously. It's just the, you know, as we go through the budget warrant timeline, this is just, you know, it's one of those milestones, if you will, where we get our first presentation here of the budget. And more to come, obviously. This will be the full point of the board and the finance committee going to town meeting, certainly. Thank you, Dana. Thank you, Jack. Okay, moving on to old business. The non-binding ballot question associated with the middle school. Chris, I don't know if you or Charlene want to do this. I know Charlene spent spent some time collecting, yeah, go ahead. I'll give you a minute. I know that Charlene collected the feedback from different members of the board and tried to take into account comments and whatnot, and this is just version 2, I guess, of this. So Charlene, I don't know if you want to fill us in on anything, or we just jump to board questions or what have you. I do think it's important to keep the question certainly as simple as possible, just because, you know, I think when folks get in there to vote at the ballot box, their attention span is not that long.
Right. The memo that I used, because there were questions or suggestions that possibly it could be used for business, and I wanted to point out that it's zoned residential currently. So under current zoning, you know, the uses are limited to either religious, educational, institutional, nonprofit type uses. So I did want to point that out, that unless there was some type of zoning change. I did try to take all the comments and questions that everybody had and tried to mold them into something. Janelle actually had some really good comments relative to the actual question, but we need to limit the question. The explanations can be lengthy, but the questions, from what I have been led to believe by town council, do have to be limited to get through the Attorney General's approval process. So that's why those weren't broadened out more, because we are very much restricted to what we can include in those. So I did try to make them as comprehensive as I possibly could, and tried to meet everyone's desires. I know that wasn't met 100% with everybody, but I tried to do that the best that I can, with 5 different people giving me some very different information at times.
I assume we had not yet sent this back to town council?
We have not.
Okay, thanks.
Can we still make changes?
Yeah. Well, I guess one of the questions is, what's the timeline on getting this done? And, you know,
As far as,
we have to have the ballot finalized, I guess is the question. It's on the budget warrant timeline. I don't have it in front of me.
It's next week, I think.
Not the ballot.
Not the ballot.
Oh, no.
I think we
well,
have
that needs to get printed and all that, so,
we have time on that, so.
we do have some time on that.
So are we open to discussion?
Well, wait, what else she's,
It's after, just looking at, we don't have the page there for going into April on the material, but we
Okay.
have both the final annual town meeting warrant, that's March 7th. So I think it's going to be after March 7th, so there's definitely some time to work on putting the ballot language together.
yeah, would also want town council to weigh in on it to make sure we.
Absolutely.
Where's properly. Okay, Janelle, you had a comment or question or topic?
Feedback from the community, and also a little bit of my own thought processes. Couple things. First, for, number 3, I know that when the RFIs came in for the first middle school repurpose committee, I believe it was, there was an offer for $650,000 to purchase the building and the land. But there's never been an offer for $1 million that I know of. So I'm wondering why we have $1 million in there, 650 to $1 million, when there's never been an offer for $1 million. And also, I think Linda brought up the fact that the $20,000 to $30,000 tax revenue seemed low. If we were to put, I don't remember the exact amount, but many units. So I'm just wondering about those numbers. And then, so that's a detail question, but on a broader scope, there's been discussion in the community about not having 4 detailed questions, but instead having, do you want to retain the property, perhaps for relocation of town hall and or other private or nonprofit use, mixed use included, or do you want to sell? And that was it. So I'm just bringing that to the board because that's something that's been going around in the community. I think there also is a third question of demolition, but, I just wanted to bring that up to the board,
Okay,
and,
we started out, I think we started out with 3 questions, and then the subcommittee, or whatever, you know, what we call it, came back with, the fourth one, the cultural center. I mean, that was an adder to it, if you will. I'll just throw that out there. The other thing I would say is in question 3, you know, you could simply just say, do you favor the sale of the Harwich Middle School building, and the land for affordable or senior housing purposes, an outside developer? Leave out the which is currently estimated to return to the town, blah, blah, because who knows? Because someone could offer $1 and we say, yes, we'll
Right,
take it.
right.
Well, you never know.
yeah.
And then there'll be some real estate tax value, because if they turned it into housing, it's obviously worth something, and they would be paying real estate tax.
And I actually can speak to that. I went to the assessors and the town clerk or treasurer's office to ask what the existing affordable housing developments in town generate. And it isn't tax, it's a fee in lieu of
Payment
tax.
in lieu of taxes, yeah.
And one of the larger ones in town,
I know.
Pine Oaks 3, which I believe has 60 units, generates $28,000 a year.
It's also deeded affordable housing and all that.
Well, this
Suppose
would
it-
also have to be, because the only way to get multi-use, multi-unit housing in there would be through a 40B based on current zoning.
Yep.
So it would be a deed restricted affordable at this point, whatever went in there, whether it was senior housing or what have you.
Yeah. I mean, quite frankly, if this were to be sold, the number's gonna be based on who shows up with the bid and what they bid. I mean, so it doesn't bother me a bit if we take out the numbers 650 to whatever it is a million. I mean, that doesn't,
I'd agree with that, Peter, because otherwise, the question becomes, I think it's 650, no, I think it's 10 million, no, I think it's 850. And rather than the concept of the question being voted on, they're gonna focus, people will focus on a number. And so I think I would agree with you, Peter, just to stop at, sell it to an outside developer, period, and get rid of the rest of the sentences.
and, excuse me for a second, Mike, I'll get you for a second. And on the explanation page, the next one, under option 3, it does talk about there was a proposal, and it does have a number. So at least people who took the time to read the explanations would see there was a number. Not that that's going to be the number, but
The explanations don't appear on the ballot, do they?
no.
Which means that
No.
you have to have the stuff that
Yeah,
you
I
want to have
understand.
in the ballot
I
rather
understand.
than in the
But again, if you included all this, I don't think you ever get it through the Attorney General's office as a
Well, let 'em
valid
turn us
question.
down
I
then.
mean, well, okay, Michael, do you have it?
I think we should give people an idea of what we've had for offers. I mean, I think
Yeah.
there's a big difference to the residents on whether or not they look at that giant building and that acreage and what they think they can get for it versus what we've actually been offered for it and what it's appraised at.
I agree.
Well, you think that can do it in the explanation, or you think it has to be in the
I
ballot
think you're
question?
gonna leave it on the ballot question because the explanation is not gonna be on the ballot. I think they have to have some idea what we're talking about for money. And you're right, could be $1, could be $1 million, could be less, but it isn't 14 million, it's not 20 million. And I don't want their expectations to be that we're gonna get them $10 million.
If it said approximately $500,000, would you be happy? I mean,
That's fine.
But if we do that, then we have to put some numbers in number 4, because obviously if an entity is going to lease the building from the town, voters need to know, well, how much am I gonna get for it?
$1.
So, who knows, we haven't created a lease yet, and we're not gonna create a lease before May,
Well,
so
the
we
oth-
don't know what it's gonna be.
my comment on that would be, that assuming the town retains ownership of the building, and there will be over time, things that have to be fixed and replaced on the building that will fall back to the town. That's where I had the question or comment about putting a sinking fund, call it a sinking fund, reserve fund, whatever. The lease payment would go to cover that, so that over time, if we had to put in a roof or whatever we had to put on the building or replace a boiler, it at least gets done. So,
But that brings you back to, oh, excuse me, I didn't mean to interrupt.
no, go ahead.
Brings you back to, in my opinion, maybe melding together questions 1 and 4, because both of them are retaining the ownership of the building, and then we still have another whole year to figure out what we're gonna do with the building.
Okay, but is the cultural center, if someone takes the building as a cultural center, are they gonna come up with $11+ million to renovate it?
It doesn't matter if we lease it out, and it's there, it's as is.
That's why I think it's two questions. I mean,
I think they're very separate ideas.
I understand the concept of, let's say this goes out to, it does go out to a ballot, and you get 25, 25, 25, 25% on all these. What does that tell you?
Yeah, we do
You
what
know,
we
I
want to
mean-
do.
That we need to hone in more, right?
And to your point on that, Peter, this is a non-binding ballot
Yep,
question.
yep.
So we're looking for feedback from the public. We're still gonna have to make the decision.
Sure.
So, 4 questions, 3 questions, 2 questions, 9 questions.
Well,
Hopefully, 2 of them will get the most
Right.
interest or
So
something like that.
I think there's a great amount of detail in here. I think that Chris and Charlene and company have done a great job with this. So
Okay, Linda?
Question. I know that the explanations cannot be on the ballot, because that's a no-no. Are we planning on putting these explanations in the warrant? So people will actually have the explanations on the non-binding ballot question? How are we gonna disseminate this information? Because really, town meeting is all about that warrant book. So how are we going to
So why it couldn't
disseminate?
be.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember.
we do
from
that?
the Conversation.
We have shortened the
I'll lean over this one. I'm trying to remember from the conversation from Coleman and Page, but I think that it would be something, I'm trying to think of, like, you know, the red book that the state distributes out with the information
Yeah, yeah,
about,
yeah.
that we could do an information sheet. So that information sheet is what would be the explanation. I don't believe it would be on the ballot itself.
Right,
what
not
would be
on the
No, no,
ballot.
no, but
would
part
Can
of
it
the
be in the
warrant.
warrant?
Yeah, I don't think there's any issue with having it on the warrant.
Because I think that then everybody would have it in one place.
So you could have the ballot question in the warrant, and the next page would be the explanation, just like it is
Sure.
here.
Yeah.
Sure.
In the
I think
warrant.
that that's doable, absolutely.
Okay.
Can I,
Good,
Thanks.
Angela.
can I ask a question on the demolition one? We give the price of the demolition, but we don't add that this simple statement that this reduces the town's expenses each year by $150,000. And I think that needs to be in there.
In the explanation?
No, I think it needs to be in the question, because you see, many fewer people go to town meeting than in the voting. So I think we have to have stuff in here that they can understand.
Yeah, that makes sense. We've been spending
It's
1.2
interesting.
we've been spending $125,000 a year on the building.
Well, I said 150, if
No,
it's 120,
absolutely.
whatever
But
the
your point's
number
well
is.
taken.
I don't, and,
So let me ask you a question. We put that in what I'll just call the preamble of this. The Board of Selectmen is evaluating options for the reuse or sale of the Harwich Middle School building, which currently costs us $125,000 a year to maintain, or whatever it is, and is seeking voter input and for options. Would
That's
that be
good.
okay?
you could do that, but I would prefer having them linked closer together.
Well, but in any one of these options, we eliminate that, so, right?
that's a good point.
That's
I
fine.
mean,
So add
say
it
that
to,
again?
Yeah,
so add it up at the top, you know, which costs us
yeah,
$1.25.
is that okay?
sure.
And so on question 3, having to do with the housing, are we okay with changing the 650 to $1 million to just approximately, or, you know, $500,000? I don't know if it's over better or not, it's just something, so.
I'm not sure if Stratford's still in the game.
I think I'd almost leave it this way.
You what?
I think if you have the 650 to $1 million, it says there's gonna be a range. If you say 500, it
$1,
starts
I
to
don't know.
become a number.
I don't, you know.
It's appraised at
This is-
1.4 million.
That's just the building, or is that the land too?
Land too.
There's not a lot of
Six and a
land
half
with it.
acres and 78,000 square feet is appraised at 1.4 million. Wow.
I would say, just, anytime you read an appraisal, they say, this is our assumption as to what it would be. Only when you receive an actual offer does that determine what the true value is. In this case, we did receive an offer of the 650 number, so we do have some kind of indicator. But the appraiser, every appraisal has that in there. It's all subject to what someone's actually willing to bid on it.
Well, it's like your own house. You may put it on the market for $10 million, but you sell it for $300.
Only
That's
worth-
its value.
It's only worth what somebody's willing to pay.
Yeah, it's only worth what someone is willing to pay.
So I don't think we could have $1 million in there, because nobody's offered
So you
that.
could just do 650,000 or better.
Yeah.
Get rid of the 1
Guys
million.
okay with that?
Fine.
I don't think we should have or better. Nobody's offered any higher than
We
650.
haven't really put it on the market yet. We put it out for a couple RFIs. We're just saying to the public, we won't go below that
Peter?
650, and we hope for more.
I believe there's someone who'd like to make a comment.
Estimated to.
I'll get to you in a second. If you stand up there at the podium, identify yourself, because you're gonna be on TV. We know who you are, but you need to identify yourself, please.
Okay, Sharon Flieger from Harwich. I just have a question when you were talking about what would go on the ballot, and you talked about demolishing the building, and if you just had that as one question, and I'm trying to picture myself trying to answer this, what would first come to my mind would be, after you demolish it, what are you going to do with it? So if that is just one of the options to demolish it, then what? Where do you go from there? And that's what I would, but if I were looking at that question, the first thing would be come to my mind, well, what are they going to do when they demolish
Yeah,
it?
the question says, do you favor demolition of the Harwich Middle School building and retention of the land for future general municipal use? What has been talked about to date is tearing it down and leaving it. So
Yeah.
making a park, basically.
All right, all right,
Well, just leaving it as grass.
Right, yeah, that's what I mean when I say,
yeah,
With
all
an
right.
option.
with no structure on it,
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
structure.
but still retained by the town. Town retains the ownership of it.
And then it
Some
becomes an,
future-
then it
if
becomes an
Some future
expense.
date, the town decided it wanted to do something that's within the zoning,
Mhm.
then it could conceivably do it.
Rebuild.
Yeah, build a new
Yeah.
middle school, yeah.
All right, all
Thank
right.
you, thank you. Okay, so where are we on 3? Just for fun, where are we with the range, or whatever we're doing here? Somebody said leave it in as 650.
It's,
I think we need to get rid of 1 million. I stand clear on that one. It's my,
You just add the line that says we've been offered 650,000.
I mean, it does say which is currently estimated to return to the town 650,000.
How about which previously had an offer of $650,000?
Fine with me. I have no problem with it.
Which previously
Had an offer or
received an offer.
received an offer of
Received an offer for,
$650,000.
And make sure it's the right number, because on the other page, we got
Yeah, we gotta make sure the number's right.
672.
Yeah,
I think
whatever
that
it
was,
is.
it was really 672.
Now it is, now the number needs to be the number that the offer was. Okay?
And would you leave in the real estate tax portion or not?
sure,
Yep.
Okay. Okay.
if we can get away with it.
just to go back on question 2, I guess I'm a little, we have kind of like in that one, 3, where you have the value and then the estimated real estate. And I think Angela's point's a good one, that right now, it's 800,000 to do demolition. There is a savings of 125,000 from not having ongoing maintenance costs. And, that should be added. If we're gonna have some residual benefit, that should be at least pointed out in that.
Well, the idea was to put that in the head, the top
The
part of it.
explanation.
No, in the top part.
In the top part,
because all
okay.
4 are going to reduce that, right?
Charlene,
All 4 get rid of that.
Didn't we say we're gonna put that in the top part?
Yes.
I was confused and asked you to repeat what you said, but you didn't hear me, so.
I'm sorry, okay, so,
Bring it back up to
Thank you.
figure it out.
So,
Yeah,
all right,
I
so,
was- I
so the
wasn't gonna
beginning
let
of
it go.
this, the beginning of this,
Okay.
at least my suggestion, way
So the
back when
intro.
was, the Board of Selectmen is evaluating options for the reuse or sale of the Harwich Middle School building, which currently costs the town, or taxpayers, whatever the number is, $125,000 in whatever, and is seeking voter input on 4 options.
Yeah, because each one of the 4 will eliminate the 125,000 we're spending. So putting it in one, you really should put it in them all.
Well, unless you put,
Or
unless
just
you
put it in
move-
the top.
Unless you move Town Hall down there, but that one has specifically in it an estimated annual operation
250
maintenance
doubles
cost
it.
of 250, yeah.
Yeah, and 250 doubles it.
I think Angela's right. I think putting it in number 2 makes most sense, because number 3, it says, we're selling it. In number 4, it says a self-sustaining private organization. And in number 1, there's a number of 250,000. So the only one it really applies to is the
Yes,
demolition.
Yeah,
No.
No, but number 3, the cost goes away.
Yeah, in all of them it
Number 4,
goes
the
away.
cost goes away, assuming that the other entity
May
is
go
gonna
up.
pick it up.
And also, in the,
It goes away 'cause we're selling
Well,
it.
In the intro, can we change Harwich Middle School building to Harwich Middle School property?
I think the problem with that is you're giving people the idea that what they look at is what goes with the building. That's not true. It's a very tiny strip of land around the building itself. The rest of that stuff still belongs to the schools.
And actually, Angelo, there has never been a formal agreement, to my knowledge, as to what constitutes what stays with Monomoy in the elementary school and what stays with the middle school building. There's been a lot of conversation, there's been a bunch of maps, but there has never been an agreement as to what goes with what. And I think that I would push for, along with this, we need to get that issue resolved. Get the map, get everybody to put their little stamp on it and say, this is what is going to happen. Because we've never done that. We keep yapping about it, but we have never actually formally made an agreement.
Well, that may be the case, but the schools, I think they have an agreement because they just gave use of the 2 ball fields, didn't they, to the Little League? So,
So show me the piece of paper where we agreed
well,
to
it's a
that.
different,
Just,
you know.
well, I don't know if you want to perpetuate it, but I did meet with the attorney that helped to negotiate that original agreement. The problem with the document is the document basically says that the land stays as the school land. Document also says that the middle school will be turned over to the Board of Selectmen. And there was no element in there as to what exactly is being turned over, other than the building. So the agreement probably would have to be reopened, and an amendment that says, here's where the dividing line would be.
I don't know if you have to I'm not sure you would need to reopen the entire agreement. I think it could be an addendum that says, and pursuant to paragraph 42 or whatever it is, this is going to be how the property that is the middle school property gets split up. And here's the dividing line, and here's the map, and we all sign off on it, we all vote on it, and we're done.
I think you should go back and look at what was the work of the committee when they were soliciting the input or bids on the, I'll call it the housing.
Right.
And I'm fairly confident there was at least a plot plan or a map at that
There
point
was.
in time that
And
we
it's very
should
close. It's
dig
not
that out and
6
see what it
acres.
looks like.
It's not the 6 acres.
Not even close.
So the 1.4 is not the 6 acres. 1.4 is appraisal.
No idea.
It's effectively, if I recall, the plot plan and the exhibits and the plans that were being discussed but never agreed upon by anybody is basically the back of that building. You know, there's some land, there's a strip there in back of the
Buffer in the
building.
back.
A buffer in the back, so the playing fields were being proposed to stay with the elementary school. And then basically, you come over to the side and you come down to Sisson, and that would stay with the building.
Yeah, I think there was a map. We should dig
Pretty
that
much.
out and bring it back, so.
But
Michael?
no one's ever agreed on that, we've never pushed it.
And parking and
just to move-
access to the
move this,
elementary.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just to move this non-binding advisory ballot question, can we agree that we're gonna add the $125,000 in the top paragraph? We're
Yep.
gonna take the $1 million out?
Yep.
Is there any other changes? And keeping in mind, again, this is non-binding, we're looking for input, we're not making a decision. Can we send this to council with those changes to get
Sure.
legal opinion?
I still think we should meld questions 1 and 4 together, because in both of them rather, we are retaining ownership of the middle school building. And it is a subcategory whether we decide to use it as a mixed municipal private use, or we decide to lease it to a private nonprofit entity. But either way, we are retaining ownership of the building. So it would be retaining ownership, demolishing, or selling. Simple, because you give people too many choices, they're confused. They're like, well, I don't know. Well, I want to keep it, but I don't know if we're going to make enough money on the lease. And question 4 doesn't have any meat to it. There's no numbers. So somebody coming into the ballot box, first time, really maybe not well aware of the issue, is certainly not going to vote for number 4, because there's no meat to it and there's no number comparisons as the other 3 questions. if we're going to have a fourth question, it has to have much more meat, but I think we can simply combine it with number one to just retaining ownership and changing the use to mixed use, or renting it out as is. And I know that the person who is in, what do I want to say, has brought the idea of the cultural center to light in town, is in favor of mixing the two questions, 1 and 4.
Is that person also willing to bring the $12 million forward to renovate it?
Right.
Well,
That's very different.
maybe.
Is that, it is
That's
very
very
different.
different.
You're very
Do
different.
we have to
Hugely
have that?
different.
I mean, why couldn't it be leased as is? Why is the $12 million to renovate it part of the question when we're just simply wondering if people want to keep it?
Folks are advocating, folks
you
are
talking about?
advocating relocating town hall to that building. That's what it takes, according to the estimates, to rehab that building to accept town hall. If you wanna eliminate the option of moving town hall, it's a different story.
Yeah. that's a-
Michael or Angela,
I
Michael?
was just saying, they're two very different options.
So how about we just keep it
And-
as
and the
retain the
bene-
building?
And the benefit, because that says nothing.
Doesn't it?
Yeah, it says nothing. It says we retain the building, and then we spend another 2 years at $125,000 a year, saying, well, shall we do a cultural center? Shall we do affordable housing that we rent? Shall we do et cetera, et cetera, and et cetera? And I think the better information we get out of this selection, the better off we are. If everybody in town wants a cultural center, then we can work at doing it somehow. And we keep that building, but by the way, we do save $125,000 a year by doing it that way too, as long as we keep the municipal stuff out of it. So
But
there's a
the-
benefit.
Michael had his hand up.
Do we need to make a motion for this, Chris, or can we just give it to you guys to send to John Giorgio? Because if we need to make a motion, I just assume make a motion and then we can.
Well, I'm not done
We're not
discussing
accepting
yet.
the ballot at this point in time. We're just having a discussion. Linda, you had your question.
I think the other thing, Janelle, is the $11 million to rehab it is, we pay for it
Right.
on town money, and it'd have to be a debt exclusion and blah, 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 and it adds chunk of coin to people's real estate taxes. Option 4 is if somebody else leases it for some other private operation, they're the ones who are gonna have to come up with the money for renovations and doing whatever it is they're gonna do to turn it into whatever it is they wanna do. So it is two different questions from that perspective. You know, number one, we pay the ticket if that's what people wanna do. The fourth one is somebody else is gonna be paying the ticket.
Then it should say that.
I think it does.
It doesn't say as is. Do you favor the retention of Harwich Middle School building to be leased as is, leased
could
or
do.
sold at, but I don't think it should have sold in
We
there.
could say as is. I think it should. I mean, because
Yeah.
somebody wants to buy it
Yeah, let 'em.
and give us a chunk of coin for it, go for it. It all depends on who shows up.
We had as is.
We had as is in
had-
there, and we were
it was
asked
in
to
there.
take it
Initially,
out.
got taken
And then you
out.
took it out. Let's
We
put it
were,
back.
we were asked to
It does
take it
make
out,
sense to put
so.
it back in, but.
Leased as is for the purpose, or sold, leased or sold as is for the purpose of self-sustaining private organization, cultural and/or community center, or educational
I
use.
can do it.
What that is what happened in Yarmouth.
Right.
You know, the cultural center that's there?
They
That's
leased
how
it as is.
they got it as is, and they paid for it. The town of Yarmouth did provide CPC funds, which I imagine we would do also, but that's about it.
The other thing about question 1 is, it doesn't, we discussed this last time, it does not indicate in the ballot question itself, because, let's face it, are people really going to read the description, the explanation? Many won't. It doesn't indicate that that 11 million is just to rehab the building, and that the actual costs of moving town hall over there are not present in those figures, right?
That's correct.
So we need to tell voters that, yes, because maybe there are people who want to say, yeah, let's spend 11.5 million and rehab it, move town hall over there, but guess what? It's going to cost another 250,000 to move town hall over there, or whatever it is. I'm not a mover, so I don't know.
Well, I
believe
think,
that is in there.
I think one comment would be,
I
hopefully,
think we did include that in there.
hopefully people will read the explanation and educate themselves before they waltz into the ballot box. I mean, this is
Wishful
kind of and, you know, because that is the residents' and the voters' obligation to be educated before they put their little X's somewhere. So,
I
That's why I wanted to make sure that it
Not
was
everybody does,
in the
really.
town warrant, so that they would have an opportunity to have it.
All right, can I suggest this period, at this point in time, that we make the modifications that you've heard, Charlene?
Yep.
Send this out to Giorgio to get an opinion, just to make sure, okay, find out what's good, bad, or indifferent. And then let's, at that point, bring it back here and see what other, our job is to think about this some more and, see if there's anything else you want to adjust. Okay?
Can I suggest
Angela,
that
yeah.
when it comes back, we vote on it?
Well, that's fine, but
Because
we just want to make
otherwise,
sure.
we're gonna change words every week.
The problem is, here's the challenge. The challenge is, we don't need to come up with an answer for this until, 6, 8 weeks from now, okay? So we want to make sure we get it right, okay? And so let's get the wording moved around. I know it's a little frustrating sometimes, but you know what? If we voted, we can always come back and say it's,
Unvoted.
well, we could change it at some point in time before we have to actually do the ballot, if you will. Janelle?
One more thing about question 4. Yes, to be leased or sold as is, but also, generating lease revenue for the town. So releasing it, just to remind voters that when you lease something, the town is actually profiting.
Depends on the lease agreement, but let me just say, and again, if you go to the explanations, I think I was the one that suggests we add in the $50,000 a year, which would be built into the lease, reserve fund for major maintenance, because we still own the building at that point in time. So, unless it's sold. Okay. All right, anything else? All right, move on to new business. We have requests by the Housing Committee to remove a member because of lack of attendance. This does happen. Do I have a motion I'd like to make?
I move that we approve the request by the Housing Committee to remove a member because of lack of attendance.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded to approve the request to remove a member from the Harwich Housing Committee due to lack of attendance. Discussion? Hearing none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? It's a vote, thank you. Okay, next we have refer proposed zoning, I think this is code amendments, unless we want to deal with codfish, to the planning board for public hearing. Last time we had some questions about this, or at least one question about it, and I think it had to do with the, Angela, the signs, is that what you were?
Yeah, I'm looking for it in here. I think it's G, but it says that the contractor, whoever's working on the building, has the right to put up a sign, and it defines the sign in terms of size and words on the property.
Oh, yeah.
I own my property. I want some say in who puts up a sign on my property. And if the contractor, most contractors have signs all over their cars and trucks, so people will know exactly who's building it anyway. But I think taking the right away from the residents on who puts up signs on their property is not the right way to go.
But if I read this right, this is also because it says not more than 8 square feet. So if you think about 2 by 4, that's a lot bigger than what I think of as a standard yard sign.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it's for an election or whether it's for a service or whatever.
I mean, if somebody, to put up a sign for an election, you need to ask the owner for permission.
Are we looking to make bigger signs? Is it-
No, right now you can't do any construction sign at all.
Okay, but if someone, if I just think of the standard sign, somebody that puts plumbing in a house and they stick a sign, Joe's Plumbing out in the front yard, is that illegal?
No, that would be in a different category. You can basically have a residential sign, very small.
So if
I
it
forget
said-
whether it's 1 square feet or
Okay,
3
so
square feet.
if Fred the builder is building a house, and he puts the sign, the one I think of, the standard one that goes in the ground with the wire frame, if you will.
Yeah, that's smaller than 8 square feet. That's more in the 1 to 3 square
I understand,
feet.
but what's wrong with that sign? Well,
No,
who-
that one's fine.
Is someone requesting 8 square feet for some reason?
That's what it used to be in the zoning code. Then when it was rewritten, it was an oversight. So this is for larger construction projects where you might have
a sign indicating who's responsible for the project.
So you thinking more like when the high school was built,
That would be one example. It could be a commercial development. It could be a number of kinds of new
but not a
development.
house,
Not usually.
not residential?
Not usually.
Does it say that in here?
Nope.
No,
What I was just gonna ask is, all you need to add is a line that says, with the authorization of the property owner.
That would be fine.
And then if I want to sign, I let you put it up.
I think what we're doing right now is, aren't we just referring it to the planning
Yeah.
board for
That
public
would be
hearing as
nice.
opposed to
Yeah,
a
but-
discussion?
But the problem is, if we didn't say anything, it would go to the planning board the way it is, and then it would come back, and this is what they would be discussing. So what I'm asking is, consider adding a line there before you take it to the public, because
I think, I'd have to double check on the process, and Charlene, you may know. But I believe we're planning to put forward this wording for the initial public hearing.
why?
Well, you just had some feedback from the Board of Selectmen, I guess,
Okay.
on that. And then I would just say, if this needs to be either commercial construction or something bigger than what I think of as a house, maybe it ought to indicate that somehow.
All right?
I mean, otherwise, we're gonna have everybody showing up with 8-square-foot signs all over the place.
No, but I think construction signs are very common. And I think they should be allowed, there should be a provision for them in the Harwich sign
I
code.
understand, but maybe you have to explain what you mean by construction sign.
Sure.
Because when I'm thinking of it as the little, the ones that are used now by, the painter, the plumber, the electrician, even the guy who's building the place.
I'm not trying to stop the signs, I'm just trying to get the owner of the property to say, yes, it's okay, or say no. Because you're
Okay.
taking his right away. or her right.
Procedurally, the only thing I want to make sure of is we need to have a public hearing in March. I don't want to have to revise the language, then come back here again.
We can-
But,
And also, since this is the planning board, I'm assuming the planning board has voted on this language.
Yes.
And this is what the language they are proposing.
Yes.
So changes to this, I think, Angelo, would have to go back to the planning board, be noticed to the public on an agenda, et cetera, et cetera. They would have to consider it and then change or not change the language.
We can
How is that
certainly,
going to hold up a public hearing so we can get to a town meeting and get this thing
You need-
published?
well,
we
in
can
the
certainly
warrant?
take input from the Board of Selectmen,
Right.
from others at the
Right.
public hearing, and change the language.
exactly.
Is there time enough to do that before the public hearing? I question whether we
Yeah.
Well,
I
I think
think
the
there's
best
a real
thing,
question.
the best thing, quite frankly, to do is vote to take this to the public hearing. At the public hearing, either someone from the board, or the town administrator, or yourself.
You don't have to say anything more. I mean, I've heard what
Yeah,
Angelo
okay,
and the
so
rest of
here's
you
the
said.
feedback I got from the board.
Right.
Let's take that into consideration.
It still only takes 2 weeks to set a public hearing up, does it?
I believe that's correct.
So, yeah, more than 2 weeks, don't you?
Actually, it's more than that, because it has to be in the newspaper, the first notice of the public hearing, no less than 14 days prior to. So it actually, it's
And
more
it's a
like
week
3
before
weeks,
that,
and
so
then
you can make the-
notification, and,
Yeah, it's
yeah.
just,
It's an onerous process that
let's
doesn't
count
make a
on
lot of
Dave to
sense,
take our
but,
comments forward.
but it has been voted on, and what has been presented to you for referral back to the board can't be changed at this point. It would have to be advertised as it is presented here before you, and any changes would have to be precipitated at the public hearing.
That's fine. Planning board, the public hearing takes input and then acts on that input, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, Michael,
And then does it come back before us for final approval?
Yeah, well,
So,
To
No,
For
appear on
final
the-
comment.
on
To
the-
Angelo's
in the
point,
warrant.
for final comment, you take a position on the articles.
Yeah.
So you will have
Yeah.
that opportunity.
had that opportunity.
but we don't get an opportunity to then change the language again. Once the public hearing is held,
And if they don't listen to that,
planning
then
board
it
takes it
fails.
all in, either
Yeah.
changes the language or does whatever it is that they think makes
it's
sense,
very simple.
and that's what goes into the warrant.
Mr. Spitz is taking copious notes here. He's,
All you have to
I've got
do,
what you said.
all you have to do is get up a town meeting and explain to everybody in the audience that they just gave the right to everybody who has, does construction to put a sign up on their property.
there you go.
And I don't think it'll pass.
You go out as the property owner and take it out. Nobody can put a sign on your property
Okay,
without
so
your
the
permission.
request is to, are you further proposed zoning code amendments to the planning board for public hearing?
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion that
Thank
we
you.
refer the proposed zoning code amendments as presented to the planning board for public hearing.
Second.
Moved and seconded to refer the proposed zoning amendments to the planning board for public hearing. Discussion? Dave has our comments.
Okay, thank
Hearing
you.
none, we'll put it to a vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
And I'll break the tie and say yes.
Okay.
That's how concerned we are about it, Dave, so make sure it gets,
Mr. Chairman, if I might, even if this board voted no, they still have the right to hold the public
I
hearing.
understand
they
that.
do.
I
Just so the
understand
public knows that.
Yes.
that. I understand. You know us, we like to weigh in on things.
I know.
It's what we do best. Okay, town administrator's report. Chris, I know on the
Yeah, I'll keep it,
the solar thing, we've been collecting more and more information, whatever, so you have something in the packet.
yes. Unfortunately, in the packet, we get the backup material, but we didn't get the email from John Giorgio, so it did go out today. Hopefully, people had a chance to see it. At one of the meetings, the board asked me to look and, or not to look, but to actually talk to John Giorgio and have him weigh in and get an opinion in regards to the money being refunded or what have you to the water department related to it. I think the write-up is pretty self-explanatory. He basically came back and said, yes, that is the process that you should utilize. He said if there was a contrary opinion from DOR, then he wanted to review that before final judgment. But that's basically what
So
he
you
said.
said you sent out that memo today? Or-
Yes.
Okay, so my suggestion to the board is to review it, and if you have any questions, we can always bring it back.
Yeah,
Okay. I haven't looked at it yet myself, so.
I
Go
did
ahead.
have the opportunity
Go
to
ahead.
read it. So I'm basically, what this says is, the money will come in from the utility, go to the general fund, we will turn around and write a check and waltz it over to the water department, and they will stick it in their cash account. Pretty much that's it, right?
we don't write checks, but the
But
money would
that's-
be in their account, yes,
But that's what we're gonna do.
yes.
Just like any other town department.
Just like.
Based
any-
upon those
just like any-
accounts that they generate that from.
Yep.
Sure.
Well,
yeah,
I was
speak to
being,
Mike.
I was being general, but just, we weren't going to ask the utility company for 2 checks. We weren't going to do any of that. We were just gonna get the money and give them their allocated portion.
Well, what I was doing is when the check comes in, I'm allocating it, part of it to the general fund, part of it to water.
There you go.
So it's an internal procedure.
So it's yes.
Yeah, thank you, thank you. Okay,
And then the only other thing I had, Mr. Chairman, the board had asked for information from the Monomoy folks on the charter school and school choice. I don't know if that's satisfactory. We put it in, and if there's additional info, more than happy to kind of follow up with them, but I just wanted to at least say that we did receive that and it was in the packet.
okay.
I think I talked enough, so I'll keep my,
Anybody get a chance to look at that? Is there any questions?
I did. I think I sent you an email, Chris, but I'm sure it got, maybe I did, maybe I didn't. But one of the things, I think I did, is it doesn't start with a beginning balance. Like October 1st, there were 352 students in the Monomoy system. 3 were choice out, 4 were choice in, and 5 were charter schools out, which gets you to October 1st of the next year. So there isn't while this gives you the middle, it doesn't give you the beginning and the end. So if you could get from them, I think we start here at FY13, so I'm assuming that's what, October 1st, 2012? So if we could just kind of, so we can just see the ins and outs.
okay.
All right, anything else on that?
You know, that little account reconciliation.
Okay. I'll ask.
Anything else on that one? Anything else, Chris?
No, I'm all set.
Good?
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
All right. Selectors report, Angela,
Nothing.
Linda,
Nothing?
Janelle,
No, nothing.
Michael? You want to tell us about the caucuses? Nothing? I mean-
Yeah.
We had that conversation.
Okay,
It was a
but-
great time.
Okay. All right.
It was a marathon trip and a great group of students, and we saw 10 different candidates, but it was a great experience.
Good.
Cool.
All right, we are adjourned. Thank you very much.